Hello, and welcome to Community Voices, where we talk to Humboldt County's movers and shakers. Today's guest, Sarah Brooks, Delegate to the California Democratic Convention. And now here's your host, Paul Bersu.
Hello and welcome to Access Humboldt's Community Voices. I'm your host, Paul Bersu, and I'm speaking with Sarah Brooks. Sarah is a delegate to the California Democratic Convention. And Sarah, I usually start by asking people to describe what they do. So what is it to be a delegate to the California Democratic Convention?
Yes, thanks for having me. I am elected to represent our district, AD2, which is all the way from the Oregon border down to partway through Sonoma County. So it includes Trinity County, doesn't go much more west than that, east than that. But and my job as an elected delegate is annually the California Democratic Party has a convention where they decide and vote on things like platform and endorsements and bylaws. And so we are able to help steer the direction of the Democratic Party in California. And that's what we try to do in a progressive way. That's our goal.
Well, let's talk about the nuts and bolts of what you just said. Where is the convention located? Is there one spot that it always happens annually, or does it move around the state?
Well, it's generally in LA because a lot of people are in Southern California. There are more delegates there because it's a population-based, delegate system. And my understanding is it can sometimes be in Sacramento, but my first term is coming up to a close here soon. It's a 2-year term. And so as a person who's only been involved in this for 2 years, I've only gotten to do virtual conventions, unfortunately. So I'm hoping, I'm running again, and I'm hoping that I'll get to go to the in-person convention next year.
Can I ask you some questions about the in-person conventions?
I can try to answer. I know a little bit, but like I said, I haven't gotten to do the in-person part yet.
Right. How many delegates are there? I guess that's the question I'd like to ask, that would be seated on the floor of an in-person convention.
Well, there are 14 representatives for each district, and I believe that there are somewhere in the realm of 50-something districts in the state. I could be, don't quote me on that. I'm guessing, but that's what I seem to recall. So, and the way it works is there are e-board representatives, which is the executive board, and those people are, sort of in a little more of a position of power where they're on some boards that are making decisions that we then the general group of delegates gets to vote on. So it's a little bit of a hierarchy that happens, and some delegates are actually appointed by our elected representatives. The governor appoints, and the senators, state and national, federal delegates are appointed by all of the elected representatives in California and the Democratic Party.
The reason I ask, I served on CTA State Council for 3 terms. Incredible energy. I hope that you get reelected and get to go to a convention. There were 900 delegates from the state on the floor.
Yes.
Jobs that you're doing, and we can ask about those jobs. When you say you're approving the platform of the party, explain to the people what that means, the platform of the party, and what you would be doing in order to help pass it.
Yeah, well, so the platform, involves the goals and the direction that the party wants to go in. So we've been having discussions about whether or not we want the California Democratic Party to accept money from fossil fuel companies, and whether or not we want the state party to take money from insurance companies, as we're trying really hard to get a universal health care bill passed, and those things and the influence they have when you have corporate donations coming in. It can make it much harder for us as progressives who are seeing the influence of money and how that takes away from the ability for our elected representatives in the state and the federal government to actually represent us in an unbiased way because of the influence of money in politics. So those are the kinds of platform positions we're working on, that they have decided theoretically that the party will no longer take money from fossil fuel companies, although there seem to be some loopholes that we're working on getting rid of. And we're trying to make sure that the party is inclusive, and the party has been very progressive on inclusivity of trying to help undocumented people, trying to help make sure that representation is really fair. And so, like, in the 14 people within our district and every district, there is a mandate that 7 of us must identify as female and 7 identifying as other than female, so that we have a gender balance, and we're also inclusive of people that don't feel they are on that binary. So that in those ways, the California Democratic Party is very forward-thinking and very progressive.
This must take an extraordinary amount of time, I would think, to discuss these items, or if you think of a platform, plank by plank like that, and take a stance. Is that the case?
Well, like I said, there are people that are in higher positions than I am that do a lot of the debating, and then we, as the people that I have a vote, but I don't necessarily have, at this point in my experience, a voice in creating what's being voted on. So right now, as I'm learning and finding out more about the way the party politics work and how to get more involved. It's mostly just for me to be able to vote on the decisions that are being made by people in higher positions than I am.
Let's say, let's have a nice hypothetical. You're reelected and you're able to go now to the convention in person, which may give you greater opportunity and access to some of these situations where you could be deciding policy. As a second-term person, does that give you more cred, so to speak, in order to take a position on a group that makes decisions on the platform?
I don't think that I would at this point have that ability, because the executive board meetings are closed. So they're deciding those sort of separately, and then bringing the things that are decided within those boards back to us as a group as a whole. But within the party, there are almost 20 caucuses, and those caucuses are actually open to everyone. So that was one of the things I really wanted to bring up today for people to be aware of. That all those caucuses for different interest groups, whether or not it's your background in terms of your interest in certain political perspectives. There's a progressive caucus, for example, or if it's your national heritage, there's a Black caucus, and there's a Latinx caucus, and so forth. And so there are lots of ways for people to join those caucuses, and then those caucuses have people that are involved in the planning processes for how we're going to vote when we do get the delegates get the opportunity to vote on the different topics that come out of those e-board meetings.
You know, what was nice when I was on the CTA state council is that I found that a very important part of the work was both endorsing candidates and taking positions on propositions.
Yeah.
And that's where those caucuses also, and we had many of the same caucuses, those caucuses were good at lending their support and helping me as a voter kind of figure out which direction I might take on an endorsement or a stance on a proposition. Is that similar to your experience?
Yes, definitely. It's very similar. We have a lot of discussions within the caucus meetings about, some of the finer points that are, sometimes not as easy to understand if you're new or if you're not as involved in the details of how some of these, political backdoor, so to speak, decisions get made. And so, yeah, it's a great place for like-minded people to find what the issues are that really affect our communities and that are important to us.
I always felt this sense of, I liked it because it felt like it was democracy in action. I was an elected official. I went down and helped set, through voting, through popular vote, stances of CTA on events. I mean, is that what's going on at the California Democratic Convention? I mean, they lay the issue out there, and then it's the democratic process. The delegates vote on it. Yes,
and my understanding from talking to people who have been involved longer than I have is it can be a very sometimes heated debates or, exciting conversations. And it is a very engaging process when you're there in person. For me, doing it online was, a little less exciting. I got my vote and I got to, watch speakers on Zoom, but it wasn't quite the same as getting to really interact with your peers and understand, how the process works when you're having a floor debate online is just very different,
I can't even imagine it. It was a thrill.
Yeah.
To be on the floor with over 1,000 people on the floor, 900 voting delegates, and the discussions that were going on up on, at the front of the hall. And then, I always was completely mystified by the parliamentarian as they worked. And it was just a wonderful process to be part of that a regular person can be part of. Right? Yeah. Your political involvement prior to this was what?
Well, I was raised in a very politically active and involved family. And so, it was really only, 5 or 6 years ago when I started to feel more compelled that I needed to be doing more, like I think a lot of us felt when things changed pretty dramatically. What's that?
What brought that on?
Yeah. Well, the election of somebody who will not be named, but, so I organized in Southern Humboldt here where I live, when the climate march was happening, when Greta Thunberg came here and really inspired people to want to speak out, and we had the largest environmental march in the history of the world happen. And a lot of us here in Southern Humboldt, when there are protests that we feel strongly about in the past, have traveled to Arcata or Eureka and joined marches there because it felt more like critical mass, but with the idea that we're marching about climate and then we're all going to get in our cars and drive up to Eureka and Arcata to complain about the environment. So I was inspired to organize a climate march here in Garberville, and we had a climate march in 2019 here, and that was part of my just realization that I wanted to feel like I was doing something to make a difference. And so I've continued to work in different various ways trying to plug into some local campaigns and help with different elected officials' campaigns. Juan Pablo Cervantes right now is somebody that I'm working for, helping get the word out about his campaign for clerk recorder and those kind of things. Still, sort of small, but trying to do my part.
Not small, important. Did somebody advise you to go this route? I would think somebody entering into local politics might indeed be local, but you've chosen a state position and kind of an out-of-the-way state position. Not many people think of a delegate to the Democratic convention or any political party's convention as a way to enter politics. How did you find out about it and then make the choice to go this route?
Yes, I have a wonderful mentor named Hélène Rouvier, and she is very involved with the Humboldt Progressive Democrats, a chartered club within the Democratic Central Committee. And so when I found out about her and met with her for the first time, she explained all of this to me. And, as somebody who's been voting as long as I have been able to, I was surprised to find out about this. And a lot of people that I talk to are surprised to find out about it, because if you're not really active, and even sometimes if you are really active in the Democratic Party, you don't usually know about this. And so she has really taught me so much. And she actually was recently awarded Democrat of the Year in Humboldt County. She's very progressive and very just amazing. And the work she does is so important. And I appreciate her bringing me on.
Now, you've mentioned progressive many times. Are there other groups in the Democrat? Of course there are. But I mean, are there other groups in the Democratic Party, and what are they called?
Yeah, I'm also part of the Rural Caucus. The Rural Caucus does a lot of work on issues that are important to people in Humboldt County, agricultural and other types of decisions. And so, they try to help formulate legislation in the state that can help farmers and that kind of thing. And then there's a women's caucus, there's a children's caucus for people who are advocates for children. There are a lot of amazing groups and people doing incredible work. And yeah, if you go to their website, if anybody's interested in joining, as I said earlier, anybody can join these caucuses and learn more about these groups within the party that are doing really important work. CADEM.org is the website for the California Democratic Party. And it's a great way to get started.
So let me go back. Maybe I didn't make that question, although I appreciate the answer on the caucus. Clearing up, I mean, are there centrist Democrats? Are there conservative Democrats? Are there labor Democrats? I mean, are there factions of the party?
Yeah. Well, so as a progressive group, we really work a lot with the unions, but there are some differences in opinions sometimes within the different Democratic groups about, mostly we have similar goals and different ideas about how to get there. And so, but I think that like within Humboldt County, our Democratic Central Committee is very aligned with progressive values, and so some of the things that I mentioned earlier that have been contentious sometimes within the party are things like how we reduce our impact on the environment, and for some people they feel that they're concerned for jobs and feeling like some of the things that can be done to improve the environment might be harmful to people, or impact people's jobs, and so those are some of the debates, but they're generally a lot of people on the same page, especially in our area.
Are other areas as aligned as Humboldt County, you think?
California in general is very progressive and has a lot of people who are very forward thinking and innovative and want to see us move in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. And so, but yeah, there are some people who certainly, they still feel that, there are things that they're willing to compromise on that other people aren't as comfortable with.
Is that the greatest challenge, I guess, within the job of a party delegate, to bring groups to compromise and try to get a party platform, a stance on propositions, endorsements of candidates?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, the progressive wing has certainly come up against quite a few struggles because the party leadership tends to be a little more centrist and a little less willing to, take the progressive stance that we are fighting for. And so, but I do think what's really important is that the progressive voices within the party are being heard and are being, that we're not being silenced. We need to be active in the party to continue to move the party forward. And I think that that's part of the reason the Democratic Party has been successful in California, is when they listen to the progressive voices, they are more likely to bring more people on board. People that I know that have left the party in the past have done so because they feel like it's not progressive enough. But there are people in positions of leadership in the party who are more centrist.
Sometimes it's hard to turn it. It's a big entity, and it's hard to miss that iceberg. Because
I try to be patient. For some people, it's really hard because they want to see change happen really quickly, and generally it doesn't. But we still have to keep working in that direction.
So now we have a general election coming up on the 8th, and you mentioned your term ends in a couple of months. The delegates to the Democratic convention, they're on a different timeline election-wise, correct?
Yes. So what will happen in the upcoming election for the delegates in California in the Democratic Party is that we will have in November, people who would like to run will throw their hat in the ring. And then in December, people all over the state will be able to go to a website. It's not currently active, but when the registration opens, you can go and request a ballot and have a ballot mailed to you. And then in January, it will be I think by the end of January, people will have to have returned those ballots, and that's when the newly elected delegates will be announced.
Are you involved in any campaigning during this period?
We do some campaigning. Mostly what we're trying to do is remind people to request ballots, because it's not something, if you're a registered Democrat, it doesn't mean you're going to automatically get a ballot to help choose who guides the party. You choose your representatives if you are aware and request a ballot. You otherwise don't really hear about it or know about it. So a lot of what we're doing, yes, is trying to let people know that this even happens, that there's the option to select somebody to represent you within the Democratic Party. So it's a lot of an awareness campaign. But then we will gather a slate of 14 people that are in alignment with our progressive values. And then when we put out our information about our slate, we will encourage people to vote for all 14 of our slate rather than individually campaigning. We will work together as a group.
So just to remind voters, Democratic voters, I mean, you have to request it because it wouldn't be fair to have the state mail out ballots for a specific party. It's not a general election, it's a party election. And then what you are for us is you are an actual voice for Humboldt County, for me, at the state convention. And so when candidates are being endorsed, when stances are being taken on proposition, when bylaws are being changed, you're my representative, and I know that there's a little bit of a voice of Humboldt County that's being exercised at those conventions.
That's right.
This is the entry level of politics that you've chosen. Are there other people that are running on the progressive ticket from Humboldt County that this is their first political offices that they've held?
A few of the people that I ran with 2 years ago, I think are coming back. We have, we're sort of in the process of figuring out our slate. And so, and because it's not just Humboldt County, we have people coming from, we have some people from Trinity County, and Mendocino. We actually lost a few people. We had, unfortunately, 2 of our members pass away last year that were from south of here. So we're still working on filling some of the positions, but I think I might have been one of the least experienced of the group. There were maybe 1 or 2 other people that hadn't done it before, but most of the group was previously involved.
Well, that's fantastic. I think it's wonderful that you got involved in that way. Who knows? A retired guy. I might want to think about something. It sounds like.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it.
I know, it's good. I'm looking forward. I hope you get reelected and go. That's about all the time. I can't campaign for you on the TV. I really appreciate you coming. That's about all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank my guest, Sarah Brooks. I want to root her on for being here. Thanks for watching. We appreciate you coming on, and we'll see you next time on Community Voice.
Thanks for joining us on Community Voices. If you represent a nonprofit that is interested in being a guest on Community Voices, email info@accesshumboldt.net. Access Humboldt, local voices through community media.